Here now is redacted correspondent John F. O'Donnell with Kevin Steele.
Welcome, Kevin. Thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, thanks. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to just jump right in. So, you're a member of IWOC, the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee. Can you give us some background about that organization and how you got involved with them?
Yeah, so I was formerly incarcerated. I did 8 years in prison. And I've met IWOC actually through them. To make a long story short, a funny story actually was IWOC reached out to someone else inside the prison. And that person knew that I was an inside organizer, so he brought the pamphlet to me and told me I should reach out. And I did. I wrote them. We built the relationship. Now I'm home, and we working to end prison slavery, basically, and abolish the prison slavery.
I think it's fair to say to anybody that's paying attention, mass incarceration is a huge moral failing of our society, the racist prison industrial complex. Prisons are supposed to be rehabilitative, but instead they've become all about vengeance and exploitation. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, this prison, it's so irony that because it's supposed to be prison rehabilitation. And I was just watching recently, Jaden Smith, he did a piece on the school to prison pipeline. And it was so real how he was explaining how they have the school bells that gears you to the alarm that wakes you up in prison at 5 in the morning. Then they have the lunch line, same way as the mess hall. So it's weird that it's considered the rehabilitation program or facility, whatever it is. And it's really not. The 13th Amendment actually, it tells you that it's still slavery. So it's just, now it's slavery inside a building instead of out on the field picking cotton. Now you making factories, you're making lockers and beds now. You're not picking cotton per se now.
So does it feel more like a kind of a sensory deprivation situation compared to there being programs in place to actually rehabilitate and try to give inmates skills so they can contribute to society when they're released?
They have programs inside the prison systems that's beneficial, but all the prisons that I've been into, it was the inmates run programs that was actually the ones that was benefiting. So you have the mandatory programs that the state provides you. That's really, it's some type of capitalism system that's going on with those programs that don't work. And then there's the inmate-led programs. That's actually the ones that's rehabilitating. But even that, the catch-22 is that they're now trying to take away those programs. I was a part of a program called AVP, the Alternative Violence Project. And then they took that out of the prison that I recently was in. And it was for no reason. The only thing I could come up with is that there was outside liberals, so-called liberals, to come in and want to help us. And this wasn't led by the state. This is something that inmates came up with in Greenhaven Correctional Facility, and now they're stopping it from all over New York. They're stopping it from every jail. So the programs work depending on what program you're taking, and it depends on what facility you're in, really.
And things can just get cut back almost arbitrarily for no reason. Speaking about inmate-driven actions, there's a huge upcoming action. There's going to be a massive nationwide prison strike. It's starting August 21st, going through September 9th. Can you tell us more about that? Can you tell us why it's happening?
Yeah, so on August 21st, this is the day one of our comrades, George Jackson, he was assassinated on August 21st. That's why that date was picked specifically to September 9th is the anniversary of the Attica riot. So these two dates are really intact with the prison revolutionary mindset. And on these days, we're calling for strikes. We're calling for strikes against the mess hall. We're calling for hunger strikes. We're calling for non-stoppage of workage. We're calling for different type of strikes. And recently, why is it so important now? At Lee Correctional Facility in South Carolina, several inmates was really beaten bad. So it's now. It's time to take the stand now of why this is happening. So August 21st, it's a lot of things that's going on. We have a list of demands that jailhouse lawyers they came up with a list of demands that we want to try to push out to the mass media and get this thing rolling and bring this prison slavery to a stop.
One thing that is very central to this strike is an end of prison slavery, of these, incarcerated workers being exploited, being paid little to nothing for all sorts of work. So that's very central to it. Can you speak more about what that system looks like, and then can you also speak about other demands of the strike?
If prison slavery ends, I believe that there's a lot of brothers and sisters that's incarcerated now that would do good in society. There's a lot of talent inside there. It's just not being shown worth, and that's actually a take back from society. That we got a lot of wasted talent, and a lot of brothers and sisters. When I went in, that was my first time ever being arrested. They gave me 10 years for my first crime. So it's weird that they do things like this. And the brothers and sisters that actually came up with this list, they have a list of demands, but there's 3 goals that's like essential to this. And one is to punch the realities of their circumstances and the living circumstances that they're living in. And another one is to galvanize all these classes to bring the differences to a side, push the difference to a side from the Bloods and the Crips or different so-called gang members, to put them aside, to come together as a unity. Another one that's most important to them is to actually have a voice in the movement, because there's a lot of organizations out here that speak for them instead of having them speak for themselves. So that's one thing that they really want, is to have an actual seat at the table of the discussion that's going on with the abolish prison slavery.
It's incredibly important that this is inmate driven, and it is inmates' actual voices talking about their firsthand experience of the repression that they're dealing with. I know you spoke about this briefly, but can you talk more about some of the particular actions and modality of protests that the inmates are planning on taking?
They have hunger strikes in certain states. They're doing hunger strikes. I know New Orleans, they done hunger strikes. Our last strike that we had was more based around the hunger strike, but this year we're trying to do a little different. We're really trying to shut down the core craft industry that's running rampant in New York State. So we're really trying to stop a lot of brothers and sisters from working there. We're trying to stop the brothers from continuing to work in the mess hall. And all the programs and the jobs, that's the so-called jobs, because they're getting paid, 7 cents an hour, we're trying to actually stop those that control the jail. Because this is a capitalistic state. So if you actually stop the money from flowing, now the question is going to be getting answered to. So you have the core craft is a big industry. That's one program that we want to stop. The mess hall we want to stop. And all the little minor jobs also, just everyone come together and just don't work for these 2 weeks, and change will come.
The 2016 national prison strike was very successful to get issues about mass incarceration and prison conditions back into the national spotlight. But the fact that it just took place over the course of one day allowed a lot of prison administrative systems in order to kind of lock down the prisoners and kind of keep that action from partially taking place. But this happening for 2 weeks now, without question, people are going to feel it because of how much industry and how much work gets done by incarcerated workers. And I don't think people necessarily realize that. Another thing that people may not realize that I wanted to ask you about is just how expensive it is to be incarcerated. I'm not talking about the expense to the taxpayers, which is high, but the expense to inmates. And both themselves and their families are routinely taken advantage of at every turn. Can you give us any specifics about any experience you've had with that?
Yeah, so the commissary is weird. It's weird because I've actually done a freedom of I forward you the freedom of information.
Yeah.
The actual companies that's providing us with the food, and they're paying. I know one company, I can't remember the name of the company right now, but if we're buying, let's say, macaroni and cheese in a bag, we're paying $3 for it, but the company is actually selling it to them for about 79 cents. So it's just so expensive to actually have it, and then you only get to spend $55 every 2 weeks. The average human in society is not living off $55 every 2 weeks. So it's just, and then after that, you have the phone calls, you're paying for collect calls, which is, you gotta put a minimum of $50 on the phone. That lasts about 2 weeks. And then you pay for every little thing, and after a while, you realize how expensive it is. And it's actually a burden on your family, because they're paying for gas to come up here to come see you. They're paying for packages to send to you. Sometimes the food is not getting let in, depending on what the package consists of. So now you're getting a package sent back to your home. And now it's just so much, it's a stressful on the financially and emotionally, it's so stressful. But in the inmate perspective, you're only making, the highest paying job is the court craft and the mess hall. At the most, they're getting 20 cents every 2 weeks. 20 cents an hour. At the most, they're making $20 to $30 every 2 weeks.
Kevin, it seems like what's being asked for in this strike are basic human rights, and everybody should be concerned about that. How can people get involved to help this upcoming important strike effort?
People that's not involved with specific organizations as IWOC or the Jailhouse Lawyer Speaks, it's just to do a blast on social media. Instagram is this powerful platform that everyone's using for the NFL strikes, the NFL boycotts and the Starbucks boycott. We need to put this out on social media also, because one out of three people have somebody that's a family member or a loved one that's incarcerated. So we need to actually put this out on social media, whether it's a picture that says National Strike, August 21st, September 9th, or we just out there on the streets and just spreading the word on word of mouth, saying, yo, there's a strike coming up in prison. We need to start giving this out more, handing out flyers. We have pamphlets in Iowa that I'm handing out, and just put out the word. We're working on a documentary right now to get it out there, and we just continue to put the word out, continue to spread the word, and do a lot of phone blasts also. We calling prisons and complaining. The more people that call, the more headaches they're gonna have, the more they're gonna complain to Albany or whatever it is, the state that governs the facilities, and continue to just get the word out and push it.
Kevin, I want to say thank you very much for your time. It says a lot about our society, the way that we treat our prisoners, and and thank you for being an advocate for prison reform. And I hope this strike gets a ton of exposure.
Thank you for having me.